Do you ever wonder what the main culprit is for so much suffering for women? Come and take a listen as I break it down. Welcome to your emotional makeover. Things your mother never told you because no one ever told her. I'm your host, Dr. Amanda Hanson. This is where you reimagine womanhood. Let us begin. I am so happy you found your way here. Together, we can change the conversation around womanhood. As a gift for leaving a 5-star written review on Apple or Spotify, or sharing this podcast on your social media, I'd like to gift you with my intimacy guide, where you will learn the art of self-intimacy. All the information is in the show notes. There is so much incredible information available to women today. Endless resources, podcasts, YouTube channels, books, conferences. Really and truly, the access is beautiful and incredible in so many ways. And yet, I feel that we are still only having half the conversation. In many spaces, in many places, we are only examining the conversations as they pertain to, as they exist in the patriarchy. Now, I recognize that so many people are even unconscious to the fact that they are so conditioned and so programmed, they often don't even realize the level of conditioning they are operating by. I hear so much information out there, and it is alarming to me how misleading, how dangerous, how wrong so much of it is for women. And I find that it continues to keep women in this swirl of discontentment, of despair, of not actually coming up with solutions for their lives. As a clinical psychologist of over 25 years, as a woman who is 51, I have lived enough life. I have worked with enough clients to see hands-on and very personally that we are missing some of the most important conversations. And it is why this podcast felt so urgent to bring to you. Why these bigger, sometimes harder conversations felt so necessary. Because as I was listening to a lot of the information that is being dispelled and shared, well, I know the intent is to uplift women. I know the intent is to help. Often, it doesn't actually create the results I think that the messenger is desiring. And I know it firsthand because I'm working with so many women who have been in therapy for over 20 years, who've tried every single possible program under the sun, who've listened to all the podcasts and still feel that they can't quite get their hands on, they can't quite access that thing that feels like it's missing, that's not quite right in their lives. I was one of those women. I was one of those women living with the quote unquote perfect life. All of the boxes checked, everything you thought you could have imagined to create or call a fulfilling life. But here's the reality. All the boxes were checked and then some. It was fulfilling as it relates to patriarchal standards. The things that I was craving, the things that I was desiring, the things that were missing made no sense to anybody else, not even most of my girlfriends. As I shared what I desired more of, more emotional intimacy, less time driving my kids to 9 million activities and being able to just sit for hours with them in the backyard and play and explore. Desiring less material and more emotional. it seemed that I was talking to a field of faces that didn't quite understand. I had so many people say back to me that, Amanda, what you're looking for doesn't exist. Amanda, you have everything. How could you possibly want more? But the more I wanted was not anything that could be checked off of a list. It was the things that lived in the crevices of my soul that made me wonder if I was just a hopeless romantic or a dreamer. And then over the years, as I resurrected my own new way forward and have since helped hundreds and hundreds of women do the same for their lives under the same methodology that I used, I now understand that even I almost talked myself out of this beautiful life because I was so conditioned to believe that I already had the beautiful life and the things that I wanted or craved were not necessary. They were unlikely. They were impossible. They were too much. I needed to step back into some reality. And that all is probably true if we are looking at our lives through the lens of patriarchy. Now, I know patriarchy can feel divisional. It can feel for some like it's a bash against men. By no means it is not. It can feel triggering. It can feel like the new buzzword when we talk about our systems and how they're set up. But the reality is we are living under a patriarchal system. And I'll show you how we are in just a moment. But patriarchy was constructed thousands of years ago. It is a system that was set up by men for the profit and benefit in every form and fashion for men. All rights were taken away from women. All leadership was taken away from women. And women then became traded as they were commodities. They were less human beings and more commodities on who could bear children, who could serve certain roles. And women then served the men and had very little free will, had very little ability or control over what they wanted for their lives, had next to no voice or power whatsoever, not even of their own bodies. I write about all of this in my book. So if you want to read more, additionally, a wonderful book, Creation of Patriarchy by Gerda Lerner, will really help you to understand how all of this came to be. So as that system was put into place and we have been operating under that system, of course, the times have changed, rules have changed, but still not very much. We still don't see many religions where women are at the pulpit in leadership. We still don't see many boardrooms or Fortune 500 companies where women are at the helm in leadership. We still don't see a division of labor within the home when it comes to tasks that need to be done or when it comes to child rearing. We haven't moved the needle necessarily as much as we like to think we have. And it is important for us to understand the reality of the world we are living in as we ask questions about our own lives. So I will thread this all together in just a few minutes, but let me just lay some of this out. Additionally, as I am recording this today, two very pivotal things. Today is the 50-year anniversary of when women had the right to open their own checking accounts without the co-signature of a man. Only 50 years ago was that enacted. I'm 51. So very little time has passed. So I want us to really anchor into that truth and that reality and that significance of only 50 years ago were women in America given access to opening up their own checking accounts. Also today, it was announced in the state of Arizona that abortions will be banned. So when we are still controlling women's bodies and the decisions therein, we are living under a patriarchy. and a patriarchal system. And so when I hear all of these different podcasts, when I have access to all of this information that is out there, well, it's wonderful and it moves the needle a bit and it's super helpful. And I know that the desire for the messenger is beautiful and wonderful. What I also know to be true is we are still only talking about half the situation, half the equation, half the story. So when we are looking at solutions within a system that we are not willing to be honest about, we're not willing to untangle from, or even face, all of these messages will be drops in the bucket. They might be momentary changes to your life for a very short time, but they will not create sustainable change for the long run if you don't deconstruct the system by which you are living in. In the same way, the analogy that talks about what the fish doesn't know it's in water. Women often don't recognize that they are submerged in patriarchy. And if we don't get real and we don't get honest and we don't look at the ways that that affects our relationships to ourselves, our relationships about how we view our bodies, how we treat our bodies, how we treat our sensuality, our orgasms, if we don't look at the fact that we are entrenched in patriarchy and how it relates to our relationships with significant others, if we don't look at the way it affects us in our places of business, in our communities, our religions, and our cultures, then we are going to be missing half of the equation. And that's why my podcast and these messages felt so urgent, because I am so willing to bring the really hard conversations. I'm willing to be the one who stirs the pot, who triggers, who feels at times like I'm a conflict. I'm okay to be that. I'm okay to be that messenger because I'm a free agent. That's the beauty of a free agent, is she can speak as freely as she needs to on behalf of the betterment of the people in the system. I know I was born with a warrior heart. I know I am the huntress who is bringing a message that will stir the hearts of many and activate them in the most beautiful ways and will cause others to wither or to run in fear. I'm okay with all outcomes, but what I'm not okay with is to not share this message. Because I know in the long run, to stay silent will be to be complicit. And I refuse a life of silence. I refuse not being able to share with you all the beautiful, amazing ways in which not only my life was changed, but so many hundreds of women who've been in the work with me, the way their lives have changed. And the way we do this is through tapping into and merging with and coming home to our buried feminine consciousness. Most of us as women have been walking around. I know this because I was there. I see it in every woman. Walking around in her life, operating by patriarchal consciousness, because that's how her mother raised her, because that's how her mother raised her, because that's the system they were in. That is the system you are now in. So many women playing by the rules, believing it's the only way to a beautiful life. And while we continue to play by the rules, thinking that's the only way to a beautiful life, what I'm seeing is endless results of broken hearts, of despair, of women who feel so many millions of miles away from themselves. When I was in my life living with the checklist of everything checked and then some, I felt most days like something was missing. And I felt profound guilt that I even felt that. Because to look at my life, I had everything. And yet I ached for something unexplainable. I felt as if I had this beautiful puzzle that was all put together, and there was this one piece in the middle. The piece was missing. The puzzle wasn't complete. And every day I looked everywhere for that puzzle piece, underneath every couch, every blanket, in every nook and cranny of my heart and my soul, and I could not seem to find that missing piece. This is the same story with almost every single woman I work with endless amounts of women I talk to on the streets, and the women who message me by the hundreds on Instagram every day. Something feels like it's missing, and I assure you, I know exactly what it is. You. Me. We're missing. We are missing as the women of our lives. We are missing from the stories of our very own beautiful lives. And we think because we have everything else that we were told made for a beautiful life. We think that because we have food and shelter, we're not supposed to ache for more beautiful love, more deep conversations, more heartfelt embraces, more tender moments sitting on the floor with our friends. But we are. As women, we were made for more of the beauty, more of the intimacy, and I am exhausted by a world that continues to tell women that they shouldn't want that. I'm exhausted by a world that continues to tell women that they should be grateful for what they have. I'm exhausted by a world that doesn't allow women to live deeper into what they desire. I'm exhausted by a world that doesn't teach women how to be in their feminine leadership and power in their communities, in the bedroom, in their most significant relationships. I'm exhausted by a world that doesn't value matriarchal consciousness and believes that only the patriarchy is the way. Patriarchy does not just hurt women. It also hurts men. I talk to countless men who are suffering under the system of patriarchy. The expectations on men in patriarchy, and the way that they earn, and the way they perform in every aspect of their lives, the way that they don't feel that they can show vulnerability, and that they cannot tap into true emotional intimacy. Patriarchy hurts everybody. And it is why here on this podcast, I will bring truths that I feel are essential for us if we want to construct a new way forward. And while we can talk about patriarchy as a system, as a whole, and it can feel overwhelming, like, Amanda, that's impossible. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to deconstruct that. That's not what I'm expecting or asking for any of us, not even myself. What I am asking of myself and opening the doorway of for you is that we begin looking inside at our own lives, our own hearts, our own consciousness, and looking at what it is that feels like it's missing, and how brave, how honest can we actually be about what it is we desire more of. Often our mothers were not able to teach us about the system of patriarchy because they didn't even realize how deeply entrenched they were. Most women of that time, and their mothers as well, and their mothers, were just happy to be alive, surviving, with basic needs being met. So with every generation, the hope is that the storyline becomes more expansive and deeper in its roots. They may have wanted less than we did, but us wanting more than they even knew to hunger for does not make us wrong, does not make the desires of your heart bad. It makes you brave. It makes you real. It makes you honest. And I assure you, it will make your family, it will make your life and this world more beautiful. This will be the one consistent message I will continue to bring. Underneath everything that we will explore, we will always look at the ways that as we disentangle from the messages that patriarchy told us we were supposed to operate by or believe in, I will help you constantly disentangle from that and look at your life through the lens of feminine consciousness, of matriarchal consciousness. On this path, there's so much healing. There's so much beauty. There's so much opportunity. I have seen me bringing this feminine consciousness into the heart of the way that I function and live in all aspects of my life. I have found it to be the reason why my business thrives, why my relationship thrives, why my connection to myself, my sensuality is better than it's ever been. Why the way I relate to my adult children, to my closest girlfriends, and to all of my clients is so magical because I am not doing it through the lens of patriarchy. I'm doing it weaved deeply in my feminine consciousness for myself and for every other person that I interact with. It is the medicine. It is the healing. It is what I feel so profoundly called to share with you, the women of the world, and the divine masculine who wants to hear this message as well. I love us all. And that's why I refuse to not speak these truths. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your feedback. Message me on Instagram or write a review. And of course, if you know a woman who could benefit from this episode, please share it with her because it can heal her life. And that's what sisters do. Love always, Dr. Amanda.